Hey guys, what's going on? It's Isaiah Henry with First Position Real Estate here. Today on our Instagram Live, we had on Victoria. She's an amazing real estate investor as well as an architect. We jumped into a lot of things based on looking at a property, understanding a little bit about construction, and as well as some HVAC and heating and cooling operations. It's a great episode. Stay tuned and hope you enjoy.
Hey,
Hey, hey, Victoria, what's
technical
going on?
difficulties.
Hey, that's all right. I'm telling you, technology gets the best of all of us. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining. The ton of great value. I've been following you for a little bit, and we've connected in person a few times. So I'm super excited to have you there. Why don't you give all the audience members maybe a 30-second overview of who you are in terms of real estate investing?
Sure, yeah. Um, where do I start? So started investing like over 10 years ago. Bought
Yeah.
my first property with my three sisters. I grew up in Mississauga, so naturally that's where I started investing. And didn't know anything about real estate, didn't know how to get a mortgage, kind of just jumped in. And yeah, it's just like a townhouse in Mississauga, fairly turnkey, rented it out and held on to it. At that point, I went to university. I studied architecture and really just on that path to becoming an architect and kind of forgot about real estate overall. Didn't really think about it. It was more of like a business investment decision. And to be honest, like that's not something we talk about at all in architecture schools. Um, yeah, so I kind of forgot about it. I graduated, and that's when I began thinking about, real estate investing again. I I was in Kitchener, Waterloo at the time. I was kind of bored at my job, and
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, like maybe I'll look at buying a house and fixing it up. So that's what I did. Kind of restarted the investing journey again, and yeah, like I did way too much work on my own, so I naturally thought like there's a better way.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's when I started like looking into real estate groups, learning more about real estate strategies. And I would say I started scaling more in 2019 and doing the burst strategy. And that's kind of most of what I've done now to scale my portfolio. Um, so yeah, now working on projects more into like real estate development and that kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of started from like very basics and then now trying to move into more interesting design and real estate investing challenges.
Well, that's awesome. And I can definitely see like that trajectory. Like a lot of people think like real estate investing is like linear, but just your example just shows like the exponential growth. Like you started with a townhome, now we're doing we're sorry, from a townhome to doing burr projects. Now we're doing like crazy development and design stuff. So that's awesome there. I do have three questions for you. So if it's good for you, I'll hop in and we'll jump into it.
Sure.
Awesome. So first question. So obviously you're an architect, but how has your experience and education as an architect helped you as a real estate investor?
Yeah. Oh, hey, Corey. Um, Architect, it definitely helps you navigate like the code, building code, and it helps you understand like where to look, like when it comes to the zoning perspective, who to even talk to. Like I think many people don't even know what power team members, right? Like who do I even ask these questions? Versus like if you're in the field, you're like, oh, like you talk to a planner for this thing, or you talk to an engineer when it comes to that. So you kind of just at least know who to talk to when you're navigating it. And to be honest, like a lot of what you learn in architecture school isn't really like applied knowledge. Like you don't know how to actually build and construct. I think that's where a lot of the practical hands-on renovating is very important. So again, like just because you're in design school and architecture school, it doesn't mean you know how to do this stuff necessarily. I think you kind of just know where to look and who to ask the questions.
That's awesome. And I think this is a big theme that I'm seeing with a lot of successful real estate investors. That you can stack the knowledge. Like you can read the books, attend the courses, or like in your case, get the education. But if you're not taking that and actually putting it into action, it's almost all for naught. Like you had some great education, but you said more and more, the more you learned is when you're actually doing it, getting into those projects, doing the burrs, running into the problems and overcoming those challenges. What would you say for an investor with just all this knowledge stacked up, but still hasn't done anything? What would you kind of say to them to push them over and to start taking some action?
Yeah, you just got to do it, to be honest. And I think if you think about any kind of job in the corporate world, most companies you're working for are extremely large, right? So rarely are you working on a project end to end. And like that's the difference between like working in a corporate like business versus starting your own small business, right? In small business, you're kind of touching every single piece that is involved in a project. Same when it comes to construction and renovations. Like you're essentially becoming a small business owner. So you need to learn all different aspects of the business. And then obviously you ideally will hire out the aspects you don't like, or, you know, like scale the business in that way. But it's when you're really starting, like you really need to know a little bit of everything, and you can usually only know that by jumping in. So
100%. I love that. I love that.
gotta take action.
Good stuff. All right, you guys heard it here first. Victoria is telling you, go ahead and take your action there. I want to jump to my second question here. Sorry if I'm looking, my questions are just over here. What advice would you offer an investor or even a first-time home buyer going through and looking at a property? What would be something to pay attention to or look out for when you're looking at the actual structure or build of a property?
Yeah. Like one thing would be, it'd be great if you go with a home inspector or a general contractor to the walkthrough. Like they'll be able to point out these things even. But high level, like you really want to care about the bones of the house. Like, sorry, I have a bit of a cough, but you know, like the major capital expenses. So foundations, you want to make sure that's okay. You want to make sure you're checking all the mechanical systems like the furnace, the AC, the water heater. If it's all open in the basement, taking a look at what you're dealing with there. Is it like old pipes? Is it like old electrical? Because that might be something you're going to have to upgrade, right? So anything that could be a major capital expense, windows, roofs. Again, like when you're doing the burst strategy, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to do all this at once, but something you want to know what you're going into, and then you can accommodate those expenses, whether it's right away or, you know, down the line in a couple years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's great too. And you made a great point of using a home inspector or a contractor. I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't know anything. Actually, that's a lie. I know a little bit more now, but when I started, I was looking through homes and, you know, I was doing the lifting things up, you know, tapping on the walls. I have no idea what I'm doing. So being able to leverage those home inspectors, you know, really educated contractors to help you make these decisions are great things to do when you're looking at a property. I'll ask you one question. If I was like a new investor, brand new, I'm looking to do the burst strategy, if there is one item on a house that I'd have to make sure to check before I give the green light, what would you say?
Probably foundation.
I was going to say the same. I was going to say the same. It makes sense. Like, you know, the foundation, it's literally like holding up the house. And if there's major issues, like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of guys who are very successful, like targeting properties with bad foundation because they can fix them. But as a new investor, you probably don't have those contacts and the ability to take on that kind of project. So just, you know, if the foundation's cracking, leaking really aggressively, it's like, maybe it's not the best thing to do. So I'll make sure to keep that one in mind for any investors there. Moving on to the last question here. This is a little bit more HVAC related.
Yeah.
So heat pumps, they're actually a new thing. It's popping up as an alternative heating and cooling solution. I'd love for you to, like, you know, talk about how heat pumps can be good, bad, or whatever you got to say about heat pumps in your new investment.
Yeah, I found this question interesting. A rare question that is asked, but yeah, a lot of people are interested in alternative systems. I think naturally, like we use like furnaces, it can supply both the heating and cooling. The downside to that is ducts are very large, and also like the sound can really travel through, especially if we're looking at like conversion projects. Like even if you meet building code, those are like the bare minimum. So it's definitely not enough, I would say. And then plus sound travels through ducts. So they're not necessarily the ideal system. Also not the most energy efficient. So when it comes to the boiler system or kind of the radiant system, it's great because one, you're already heating water because you have domestic hot water. So it kind of doubles. Sometimes they're called like combi units.
Yeah.
So then you have like heated water going through pipes, and then they're heating these radiators in like the living room or your bedrooms and whatnot. So one, it's better for sound because like those pipes are much smaller than, say, ducts. You also don't have to deal with like large bulkheads. So if ceiling height's potentially an issue, could maybe be a solution there. And heating through water is more energy efficient than through air. So I find they are quite efficient systems. The downside is it doesn't provide a cooling system, right? Like you can't really cool through like heat, like the water. So you need to think about a secondary system, like the ductless units that could be for AC. But there is a system called a CERV. When we're in terms of talking about like alternative systems, it's electric.
Yeah.
And you can't, they're fairly small, so you could probably buy them per unit if you're doing like a 2-unit or a 3-unit, kind of hang it in the closet. And people might have heard of like an ERV system before, and they can heat the unit, but a CERV does heating and cooling. And essentially it does run through ducts, but because they're smaller, you could potentially buy 1 unit per unit in your like duplex or triplex. So that's another system that is becoming more popular. It is expensive, but it's electric based. So any kind of, I guess, design firm kind of looking at more energy efficient solutions, they're considering, it's called a CRV system.
Yes, yes. And I've been doing some research as well. I have a renovation going on right now. It's a furnace right now, but there's an opportunity to make it a 2-unit. And just looking at alternative solutions, talking with other people in the industry, and I was excited because this just fell at a really good time. A lot of people are trying to get more energy efficiency around, but the thing I like about these systems is that you can also offload stuff to a tenant if we're talking in a rental capacity, because if we're putting it on the hydro, we can offload that to the tenant. The tenant gets a better service because they're getting a higher quality of heat, and they can control it. Some people want to run the system all the time, make it nice and warm. No problem. Other people don't care about it that much. Give that opportunity to the tenant, and they can pay for that accordingly. So I love that. That's a great option. And we might have to get on a call offline and maybe talk some stuff about my last renovation there. But Victoria, just as we're wrapping up here today, is there anything you'd like to tell the audience or wrap up with before we jump off today?
No, I think like anybody interested in renovations, I think it's just connecting to other real estate investors like yourself and jumping right in. I think that's the key, and aligning yourself with experts if you don't know, like don't have that knowledge yet. And I think you'll just naturally get it over time. Even for me, like when I was like doing some renovation projects just out of school, like I was still learning, right? So I think sometimes you look at other people and you're like, oh, they know everything. But it's not true. Like even as an architect, like I'm continuing to learn things every single day. So yeah, just got to keep doing more and more, and you'll jump into like bigger and bigger challenges.
That's awesome. I love it there. I love it. And just as we finish up here, Victoria, where can people find more about you if they're looking to get in touch with you, see what you're going on? Where can they find out a little bit more about you?
Sure, you can reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is BuildXLab. And if you're looking to find a designer for your project, you can reach me at buildxdesign.ca.
Perfect stuff. I'll put that in the Instagram. I'll probably put it in the show notes when it jumps on YouTube as well. Victoria, just wrapping up here again, it's Isaiah Henry, First Position Real Estate. I help government employees build wealth and retire early with real estate. Had on Victoria today. Such an awesome episode. Really dived into kind of what to look for in a property, her experience as an architect, and maybe some nuances coming with the heating and cooling systems in the future. Victoria, thanks again for joining me today, and I hope you had a great time. But until next time, have yourself a great day.
Thanks, Isaiah. Nice talking.
Take care. Bye-bye.